Throughout history, some families build wealth that lasts for centuries, while others lose everything within a single generation. The Astors and Vanderbilts are still incredibly wealthy today, nearly 200 years later. Meanwhile, 70% of wealthy families lose their fortunes by the second generation, and 90% have nothing left by the third generation. What if I told you the difference isn't luck, intelligence, or even the size of the initial fortune? It's about 10 specific strategies that dynasty-building families use to not just get rich, but stay rich forever. These aren't the wealth-building tactics you hear about. These are wealth-preserving systems designed to protect and multiply money across multiple lifetimes. Most people focus on making their first million, never realizing that keeping wealth for generations requires completely different thinking. The ultra-rich don't just invest differently. They structure their entire financial lives to survive market crashes, political upheavals, and even family disputes that destroy ordinary fortunes. I'm about to reveal the exact 10 strategies that separate temporary wealth from permanent dynasties. And the first strategy? It's so powerful that companies using this approach have outlasted entire empires and are still thriving today after hundreds of years. Hit subscribe and comment Dynasty Builder if you're ready to learn how the truly wealthy think beyond their own lifetime. But that's just the obvious part. The first strategy will reveal why some businesses outlast empires. Strategy 1. Build an evergreen business. The first strategy that separates generational wealth from single-generation success is building businesses that outlast their founders. Most entrepreneurs create companies that die with them, leaving their families with assets to liquidate rather than income machines to inherit. But the truly wealthy build evergreen businesses, enterprises so systematically structured that they thrive for centuries, creating wealth for generation after generation. But that's just the obvious part. The first strategy will reveal why some businesses outlast empires. In the ancient kingdom, where master craftsmen competed to create lasting legacies, there lived 3 equally skilled artisans who approached their work with fundamentally different philosophies about permanence and succession. Each craftsman possessed exceptional talent and had built successful workshops, but their approaches to legacy building would determine whether their life's work survived beyond their own lifetime. The first craftsman was obsessed with personal excellence and individual recognition. He created magnificent pieces that showcased his unique artistic vision, spending countless hours perfecting techniques that only he could execute. His workshop was entirely dependent on his personal involvement. Every design decision, every quality standard, every client relationship flowed through him directly. While his reputation soared and his pieces commanded premium prices, his business model required his constant presence and irreplaceable skills. The second craftsman took a different approach, focusing on building systematic processes rather than showcasing individual brilliance. He documented every technique, created training protocols for apprentices, and established quality standards that could be maintained without his personal oversight. His workshop became a well-oiled machine where skilled workers could produce excellent results following proven methods, rather than relying on artistic inspiration. The third craftsman understood something even more profound about lasting legacy. Instead of just creating products or systems, he built a brand that represented enduring values and timeless quality. He established relationships with suppliers that spanned generations, created customer loyalty that passed from parents to children, and most importantly, built a reputation that transcended any individual craftsman's involvement. When all 3 masters eventually passed away, the results revealed everything about sustainable wealth creation. The first craftsman's workshop closed immediately because no one could replicate his unique skills. The second craftsman's business survived for several years under capable management, but gradually declined without his leadership and vision. The third craftsman's enterprise not only survived but thrived for centuries, becoming a dynasty that continued creating wealth for his descendants long after his original techniques had been surpassed. Here's what that story reveals about evergreen business building. Companies like Mercedes-Benz, Gucci, and Chanel aren't just businesses. They're generational wealth machines that create value through brand heritage, systematic excellence, and timeless market positioning. Here's where most wealthy people make their biggest mistake about multiplying their efforts. Strategy 2. Apply leverage. The second strategy for building generational wealth is understanding that working harder will never create dynasty-level success. You must work smarter by applying multiple forms of leverage simultaneously. Most people think leverage means borrowing money, but the ultra-rich use 5 distinct types of leverage to multiply their efforts exponentially: financial resources, human talent, technological systems, marketing reach, and accumulated knowledge. Here's where most wealthy people make their biggest mistake about multiplying their efforts. In the vast empire where territorial expansion required coordinating massive resources across great distances, there ruled a wise emperor whose approach to building lasting power became legendary among military strategists and political scholars. Unlike conquerors who relied solely on brute force or personal charisma, this emperor understood that sustainable dominance required systematically leveraging multiple types of power simultaneously. The emperor organized his expansion strategy around 5 distinct armies, each representing a different form of leverage. His financial army consisted of trade specialists and treasury managers who used the empire's wealth to fund new ventures, acquire strategic resources, and invest in infrastructure that would generate returns for generations. Rather than spending gold directly, they used it as leverage to create even greater wealth. His people army was composed of talented generals, administrators, and skilled workers who could execute the emperor's vision across multiple territories simultaneously. Instead of trying to personally manage every aspect of the empire, he leveraged human expertise to multiply his reach and effectiveness far beyond what any individual could accomplish alone. The technology army focused on engineering innovations, communication systems, and logistical improvements that automated processes and accelerated expansion. They built roads, bridges, and communication networks that allowed the empire to operate efficiently across vast distances without requiring the emperor's direct involvement in daily operations. His marketing army consisted of diplomats, cultural ambassadors, and storytellers who spread the empire's reputation and influence beyond its physical borders. They leveraged cultural appeal and strategic messaging to win allies, discourage enemies, and create lasting loyalty that transcended military conquest. Finally, the knowledge army preserved and expanded the empire's intellectual capital through scholars, strategists, and advisors who continuously learned from other civilizations and developed increasingly sophisticated approaches to governance, warfare, and wealth creation. Here's what that story reveals about leverage application. The emperor's empire lasted for centuries because he understood that sustainable power comes from systematically multiplying your efforts through financial resources, human talent, technological systems, marketing influence, and accumulated wisdom rather than relying on personal effort alone. Wait, the most important part is understanding this ancient wealth protection secret that keeps dynasties safe from taxation. Strategy 3. Minimize taxes. The third strategy for preserving generational wealth is understanding that taxes are often the largest expense wealthy families face, but they're also the most controllable through legal optimization strategies. Most people accept tax obligations as fixed costs, never realizing that the ultra-rich use sophisticated but perfectly legal structures to minimize their tax burden while maximizing their ability to pass wealth to future generations. This isn't tax evasion. It's tax intelligence. Wait, the most important part is understanding this ancient wealth protection secret that keeps dynasties safe from taxation. In the prosperous trading empire, where merchant guilds controlled vast commercial networks, there existed three different approaches to managing the tribute demanded by various kingdoms and territories along trade routes. Each guild faced identical tax obligations, but their strategies for handling these financial burdens would determine which organizations thrived across multiple generations. The first guild, known as the direct payers, simply accepted every tax demand at face value. When kingdoms imposed tribute on their trade goods, they paid the full amount, without question. When new rulers demanded additional fees for crossing their territories, these merchants absorbed the costs and passed them on to customers. While this approach was straightforward and avoided conflicts with authorities, it severely limited their ability to accumulate wealth and expand operations. The second guild, called the strategic minimizers, had discovered that different territories offered various incentives for specific types of trade activities. They studied the complex web of tax laws and trade agreements, structuring their operations to take advantage of charitable deductions for supporting local communities, investment incentives for developing infrastructure in emerging regions, and preferential treatment for merchants who contributed to educational or cultural initiatives. The third guild, known as the Structure Masters, had developed the most sophisticated approach of all. They established multiple trading entities across different jurisdictions, each optimized for specific types of transactions. They created charitable foundations that supported causes they genuinely cared about while providing substantial tax benefits. They established family offices that managed wealth across generations using trusts and offshore entities in tax-friendly territories. Most importantly, the structure masters understood that tax minimization wasn't just about reducing current obligations. It was about preserving wealth for future generations through strategic estate planning, succession structures, and international coordination that prevented devastating inheritance taxes from destroying family fortunes. Here's what that story reveals about tax optimization. The ultra-rich don't just pay whatever they're initially assessed. They legally structure their affairs to minimize taxes through charitable giving, strategic business formations, international planning, and estate structures that preserve wealth across multiple generations. This next strategy reveals how the ultra-rich access their wealth without ever actually selling their assets. Strategy 4. Buy, Borrow, Die strategy. The fourth strategy used by billionaire families is a sophisticated approach called Buy, Borrow, Die that allows them to access vast wealth without ever paying capital gains taxes. Instead of selling appreciating assets and triggering massive tax bills, they borrow against their holdings, live off borrowed money, and pass stepped-up assets to heirs who inherit at current market value with no capital gains liability. It's perfectly legal and devastatingly effective. This next strategy reveals how the ultra-rich access their wealth without ever actually selling their assets. In the ancient feudal system, where vast land holdings determined family power for centuries, there lived a master land baron whose approach to wealth access became the foundation for preserving family dominance across multiple generations. Unlike other nobles who sold parcels of land when they needed funds, this baron had discovered a method for accessing wealth without diminishing his estate's long-term value. The baron owned extensive territories that had appreciated dramatically in value over generations. Prime agricultural lands, strategic trade route locations, and valuable mineral deposits. When he needed substantial funds for expansion, political influence, or family obligations, traditional nobles would sell portions of their holdings to raise cash, permanently reducing their estate's income-generating capacity and shrinking their family's long-term wealth. Instead, the wise baron developed relationships with wealthy merchants and moneylenders who understood that his vast land holdings provided ironclad security for loans. Rather than selling his properties, he would borrow against their value, using the land as collateral while retaining ownership and control. This allowed him to access needed funds without triggering the feudal taxes and fees associated with property transfers. The borrowed money was then strategically invested in additional income-producing assets, more land, trading ventures, or infrastructure projects that generated returns exceeding the loan's interest rate. Meanwhile, his original properties continued appreciating in value and producing rental income, creating a positive arbitrage opportunity where borrowed funds earned more than they cost. Most ingeniously, when the baron eventually passed away, his heirs inherited the entire estate at its current market value rather than the original purchase price. This inheritance law feature meant that all the accumulated appreciation from previous generations became the new baseline, effectively erasing any potential capital gains taxes that would have been owed if the properties had been sold during the baron's lifetime. Here's what that story reveals about the buy, borrow, die strategy. By borrowing against appreciating assets instead of selling them, wealthy families can access liquidity while preserving their holdings and avoiding capital gains taxes. When assets pass to heirs with stepped-up basis, generations of appreciation become tax-free forever. All of the above becomes meaningless if you don't protect your wealth through this ancient vault system. Strategy 5. Set up a trust. The fifth strategy for protecting generational wealth is creating trust structures that separate ownership from control, making your assets virtually untouchable while allowing you to maintain complete decision-making authority. Most people think they must personally own everything they control, but the ultra-rich understand that technical ownership can actually make wealth more vulnerable to lawsuits, taxes, and other threats. Trusts provide the ultimate protection while preserving family control. All of the above becomes meaningless if you don't protect your wealth through this ancient vault system. In the kingdom where merchant families faced constant threats from bandits, rival traders, and corrupt officials seeking to confiscate wealth, there existed a legendary vault master whose protective systems became the model for preserving family treasures across generations. Unlike other wealthy families who kept their valuables in personal strongboxes that could be seized during legal disputes or political upheavals, this master had devised an ingenious network of protected repositories. The Vault Master established multiple secure facilities throughout the kingdom, each operated by trusted guardians who followed strict protocols about treasure management. The brilliant aspect of this system was that while the merchant family's wealth was stored in these vaults, the family never technically owned the facilities themselves. Instead, they held special keys and authorization documents that gave them complete control over accessing and directing their treasures. When rival merchants filed lawsuits claiming damages from business disputes, court officials could not seize the family's wealth because it wasn't technically held in their personal possession. The vault system was legally separate from the family's direct ownership, making the treasures unreachable through conventional legal proceedings. Similarly, when corrupt officials demanded tributes or tried to confiscate assets, they found nothing in the family's direct possession to claim. Most importantly, when the family patriarch eventually passed away, the vault system allowed for seamless transition to the next generation without triggering the kingdom's heavy inheritance taxes. Instead of transferring ownership of assets, the family simply passed along the control keys and authorization documents. The new generation became the vault controllers without the wealth technically changing ownership, avoiding the devastating taxes that destroyed other family fortunes during succession. The vault guardians continued operating according to established protocols, ensuring that family wealth remained protected, while successive generations maintained full control over their inheritance. This system allowed the merchant dynasty to preserve and grow their wealth across multiple centuries, while rival families saw their fortunes confiscated, taxed into oblivion, or lost through legal disputes. Here's what that story reveals about trust structures. By placing assets in trusts, wealthy families separate ownership from control, making their wealth legally untouchable, while maintaining complete decision-making authority and enabling tax-efficient generational transfers. Here's where smart money management becomes generational power through this secret banking system. Strategy 6. Life insurance as investment. The sixth strategy transforms ordinary life insurance into a sophisticated investment vehicle that provides tax-free growth, creditor protection, and strategic arbitrage opportunities. While most people view life insurance as simple death benefits, the ultra-rich use specially designed policies as supercharged bank accounts that accumulate wealth invisibly, while providing multiple layers of protection and financing options unavailable through traditional investments. Here's where smart money management becomes generational power through this secret banking system. In the ancient trading confederation, where merchants traveled dangerous routes carrying valuable goods, there existed a master trader whose approach to protecting and multiplying wealth became the foundation for generations of commercial success. Unlike other merchants who relied solely on armed guards or hidden compartments to protect their valuables, this trader had discovered a sophisticated system that provided both security and growth opportunities. The trader established relationships with insurance guilds that offered a unique service. In exchange for regular premium payments, these guilds would guarantee substantial payouts to the trader's family if anything happened to him during his dangerous journeys. However, the master trader had negotiated a special arrangement that went far beyond basic protection coverage. His insurance contract included a wealth accumulation feature, where excess premiums beyond the basic coverage costs were invested by the guild's expert money managers in diversified trade ventures, real estate acquisitions, and lending operations. These investments grew tax-free within the insurance structure, creating a substantial cash reserve that the trader could access during his lifetime. Most ingeniously, the trader could borrow against this accumulated cash value at preferential interest rates lower than those available from traditional moneylenders. He would use these borrowed funds to finance new trading expeditions or invest in additional opportunities that generated returns exceeding his borrowing costs, creating profitable arbitrage while his insurance cash value continued growing independently. When the trader needed substantial capital for major ventures, instead of liquidating other investments and triggering tax obligations, he would simply borrow from his insurance policy. The borrowed amount didn't reduce his death benefit or stop his cash value from appreciating, effectively allowing him to use the same money twice, once through the loan and once through continued policy growth. Most importantly, the trader established similar insurance policies for his children and grandchildren, ensuring that future generations would inherit both substantial death benefits and accumulated cash values that could fund their own business ventures and continue the family's commercial dynasty. Here's what that story reveals about life insurance as investment strategy. Properly structured policies provide tax-free growth, creditor protection, preferential borrowing rates, and multi-generational wealth transfer benefits that traditional investments cannot match. This is the moment where everything clicks about automating your wealth-building systems. Strategy 7. Automate investing and saving. The seventh strategy for building generational wealth is removing human emotion and decision-making from the wealth accumulation process through systematic automation. Most people fail to build substantial wealth not because they lack money, but because they constantly second-guess their investment decisions, spend money that should be saved, or fail to invest consistently during market volatility. Automation eliminates these psychological barriers and ensures wealth builds regardless of emotions or circumstances. This is the moment where everything clicks about automating your wealth-building systems. In the mountainous regions where ancient villages depended on grain mills to process their harvests, there lived a master engineer whose innovative approach to mill operation became the foundation for sustainable prosperity across multiple generations. Unlike other millers who required constant manual operation and daily oversight to keep their mills functioning, this engineer had designed a revolutionary system that operated independently of human intervention. Traditional mills required millers to manually adjust water flow, monitor grinding consistency, and constantly tend to mechanical operations throughout each day. If the miller became ill, traveled, or simply forgot to perform daily maintenance, the mill would stop producing income. The community's prosperity was entirely dependent on the miller's personal availability and consistent effort. The master engineer understood that human inconsistency was the greatest threat to long-term prosperity. He designed an ingenious water wheel system that automatically regulated flow based on seasonal water levels, incorporated self-adjusting mechanisms that maintained optimal grinding speed regardless of grain volume, and created maintenance protocols that required minimal human intervention. Most importantly, the engineer built collection systems that automatically channeled a predetermined percentage of each day's production into separate storage areas, some for immediate community needs, some for emergency reserves, and some for investment in additional mill improvements. This systematic approach ensured that wealth accumulation happened consistently, without requiring daily decisions about how much to save or spend. The automated mill operated efficiently through changing seasons, economic fluctuations, and even during periods when the engineer was away on other projects. The community's wealth grew steadily year after year because the system removed emotional decision-making and human inconsistency from the wealth-building process. When the engineer eventually passed away, his automated mill continued operating just as efficiently under his children's oversight. They inherited not just a valuable asset, but a self-sustaining system that had already proven it could generate wealth independently of individual management decisions or market timing concerns. Here's what that story reveals about automation strategy. By systematically directing predetermined percentages of income toward investments and savings without manual intervention, wealthy families ensure consistent wealth accumulation regardless of market conditions, emotional states, or personal circumstances. What happens next separates wealthy individuals from wealthy dynasties through income diversification. Strategy 8: Multiple income streams. The eighth strategy for securing generational wealth is building diversified income networks that protect family prosperity from economic disruptions, industry changes, and market volatility. Most people depend on single income sources that can disappear overnight, but dynasty-building families create multiple revenue streams that support each other during difficult periods while accelerating wealth accumulation during prosperous times. What happens next separates wealthy individuals from wealthy dynasties through income diversification. In the fertile valley, where the kingdom's agricultural prosperity depended on reliable water sources, there lived a master water engineer whose approach to irrigation became the model for sustainable resource management across multiple generations. Unlike other farmers who relied on single river sources that could fail during droughts or floods, this engineer had designed a comprehensive network system that drew from multiple water sources simultaneously. The engineer's network included 5 distinct water sources, each contributing to the same central reservoir that supplied his family's extensive agricultural operations. The mountain stream provided consistent flow from seasonal snowmelt, offering predictable water during spring and summer months. The deep wells accessed underground aquifers that remained stable even during surface droughts, ensuring water availability during the driest periods. The rainwater collection systems captured and stored precipitation during abundant seasons, creating reserves that could sustain operations when other sources diminished. The river diversions channeled water from the main waterway during high-flow periods, taking advantage of abundant resources without depleting the source. Finally, the recycling systems purified and reused water from processing operations, maximizing efficiency while reducing waste. When severe droughts struck the region and single-source farms failed completely, the engineers' diversified network continued providing adequate water because multiple sources compensated for individual shortfalls. During flood years, when some sources became unusable, the network's redundancy ensured continued operations while competitors struggled with disrupted supply chains. Most importantly, the engineer had designed each water source to enhance the other's effectiveness. Excess water from abundant sources was automatically channeled to storage systems, well water supplemented surface sources during peak demand periods, and recycled water reduced strain on natural sources during scarcity. The diversified water network supported not just immediate agricultural needs, but enabled expansion into additional crops, livestock operations, and even small manufacturing ventures that required reliable water access. This multi-layered approach created multiple income streams from the same infrastructure investment while protecting against single point-of-failure scenarios that destroyed other farming operations. Here's what that story reveals about income diversification. Wealthy families build multiple revenue streams that support and enhance each other. Business profits, investment returns, real estate income, and intellectual property royalties, creating networks that strengthen during prosperity and provide security during adversity. The following story explains why most people focus on getting rich while dynasties focus on staying rich through long-term strategy. Strategy 9. Invest your money long-term. The ninth strategy for building generational wealth is understanding that true prosperity comes from patient, long-term investing in appreciating assets rather than chasing short-term market fluctuations or speculative opportunities. Most people focus on getting rich quickly through day trading or trendy investments, but dynasty-building families plant financial seeds that grow into massive wealth trees over decades and centuries. The following story explains why most people focus on getting rich, while dynasties focus on staying rich through long-term strategy. In the ancient kingdom, where agricultural wisdom determined family prosperity for generations, there lived a master orchard keeper, whose approach to cultivation became legendary among those who understood the difference between immediate gratification and lasting abundance. Unlike other farmers who focused on annual crops that provided quick harvests, but required constant replanting, this master understood the superior power of patient cultivation. The orchard keeper inherited modest land from his ancestors and faced a crucial decision about how to use his limited resources. Many neighboring farmers mocked his approach, choosing instead to plant fast-growing vegetables and grains that could be harvested within months and sold immediately for quick profits. They enjoyed steady income from their seasonal crops and lived comfortably year after year. However, the orchard keeper had a different vision that extended far beyond immediate needs. He planted fruit trees, nut groves, and other long-term crops that would require years to mature before producing their first harvests. During the early years, his land appeared unproductive compared to his neighbors' flourishing annual crops. He faced periods of financial difficulty while waiting for his investment to mature. The orchard keeper also diversified his planting strategically. Some trees produced early harvests within 5 years, others reached peak production after decades, and some varieties would continue producing for centuries. He incorporated different types of assets: fruit trees for regular income, timber trees for major capital needs, and specialty crops that increased in value as they aged. After 2 decades, the transformation became undeniable. While neighboring farmers remained trapped in cycles of constant replanting and seasonal income fluctuations, the orchard keeper's estate generated abundant harvests with minimal ongoing effort. His mature trees produced more fruit annually than neighboring farms could grow through intensive cultivation. Most importantly, when the orchard keeper passed away, he left his children a self-sustaining wealth machine that continued producing increasing income for generations. His patient investment in long-term growth had created something far more valuable than quick profits, a perpetual income source that supported his family dynasty. Here's what that story reveals about long-term investing. Patient investment in appreciating assets like quality stocks, real estate, and businesses creates wealth machines that compound over decades, far exceeding the returns from short-term speculation or annual income strategies. Here's where dynasty thinking begins, with crystal clear vision about what you're actually building. Strategy 10. Set clear financial goals. The 10th and foundational strategy for generational wealth is establishing crystal clear financial goals that extend beyond your own lifetime, creating a roadmap that guides family financial decisions across multiple generations. Most people set vague retirement goals or short-term wealth targets, but dynasty builders create comprehensive master plans that specify exactly how wealth will be built, protected, and transferred to create lasting family prosperity. Here's where dynasty thinking begins, with crystal clear vision about what you're actually building. In the ancient empire, where legendary monuments and cities required centuries to complete, there lived a master architect whose approach to long-term planning became the foundation for projects that outlasted entire civilizations. Unlike other builders, who focused on completing individual structures within their own lifetimes, this architect understood that truly magnificent achievements required multi-generational vision and systematic execution. The architect was commissioned to design a grand capital city that would serve as the empire's center of power for centuries. Rather than simply drawing immediate construction plans, he created a comprehensive master blueprint that detailed not just the initial building phases, but expansion plans, infrastructure requirements, and maintenance protocols that would guide development for the next 500 years. His master plan included specific phases with precise objectives: establishing foundational infrastructure during the first generation, building core governmental and commercial districts during the second generation, adding cultural and educational centers during the third generation, and creating defensive and expansion capabilities for future centuries. Each phase built upon previous achievements while preparing for subsequent developments. Most importantly, the architect established training academies and documentation systems that would preserve his planning methodology across generations. He understood that his personal involvement would span only a fraction of the project's timeline, so he created systems that could maintain design integrity and construction quality even after he was gone. The architect also planned for various contingencies: economic downturns that might slow construction, political changes that could alter priorities, natural disasters that might require rebuilding, and technological advances that could improve construction methods. His flexible framework could adapt to changing circumstances while maintaining the overall vision. Centuries later, when the capital city had become the most magnificent metropolis in the known world, historians marveled at how consistently each generation had followed the original master plan. The architect's clear vision and systematic approach had guided hundreds of builders, thousands of workers, and dozens of rulers toward a unified achievement that none could have accomplished alone. Here's what that story reveals about financial goal setting. Generational wealth requires specific, measurable objectives that extend beyond individual lifetimes. Detailed plans for wealth accumulation, protection strategies, succession protocols, and legacy preservation that guide family financial decisions across multiple generations. Your family's financial dynasty starts with a single decision: will you think beyond your own lifetime? There you have it, the 10 strategies that separate temporary wealth from permanent dynasties. Building evergreen businesses that outlast empires. Applying multiple forms of leverage to multiply your efforts, minimizing taxes through legal optimization, using buy, borrow, die strategies to access wealth without selling assets, protecting everything through trust structures, transforming life insurance into investment vehicles, automating wealth accumulation to remove human emotion, creating diversified income networks, investing patiently for multi-generational growth, and setting crystal-clear goals that extend beyond your lifetime. Here's the powerful truth. 70% of wealthy families lose everything by the second generation because they focus on getting rich instead of staying rich. These 10 strategies are what separate the Astors and Vanderbilts from the countless forgotten fortunes. Your challenge this week: choose one strategy and take the first step toward dynasty building. Maybe it's setting up automated investing, researching trust structures, or defining your family's 100-year vision. Which strategy will your family start with? Comment on the number that resonates most with your situation. If this completely changed how you think about generational wealth, hit subscribe and share it with someone ready to build beyond their own lifetime. Remember, generational wealth isn't about getting rich. It's about staying rich forever.